Cool. Just checking.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first of the fall seminar in our monthly SED meetings. Today we have Gerhard Sonert from our own science education department at CFA. Gerhard, he's actually a sociologist by training, and he spent about like 20 years at Harvard Physics Department, where he carried out major projects about situations of women in science. His other interests include science policy, history of science, and migration. He holds an MA and doctorate degree in sociology from the University of Erlangen. It's a difficult word to say. From Germany, and MPA from Harvard University. Gerhard, his contribution to both sociology and astronomy is to combine these two vocabulary to a new vocabulary called Astrosociology, and he have taught this course last year, very successful, and he is continuing teaching this course every Wednesday afternoon.
No, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Science Center. But before we get started with Gerhard, Jackie want to give you a heads up of the upcoming seminars for this fall as well in the winter.
Thanks, Chen. We every month have one of these seminars. The spring list is not yet finalized of who exactly is talking, but we have the speakers for the next few months set up. I know we have a list at the back of the room of exactly who is speaking. If you have someone that you think would be a great speaker for the spring, please talk to us. I know Wendy has like a mailing list for when these are going out, so if you're not on that, please talk to her to make sure that you can get like updates for when the seminars are happening. Yeah. Thank you, Gerhard, for giving this. Here you go.
Wow, thanks for the enthusiastic welcome. I should also introduce my partner in crime, Jace Prohinsky, who is a teaching fellow of that class, and he has really a major role in teaching this class, and he will also have a major role in this seminar, and he'll take us through two exercises that we do in class that you see what we actually do. One at the very beginning of it that is shorter, and then at the very end of the talk. So what am I going to talk about? The first one is because astrosociology is not something that a lot of people are familiar with. So before I go into teaching that course, I thought we spend some time about what astrosociology is, why it is there, and as Jen said, I'm a sociologist of science, so I also have an interest in how subdisciplines in science develop, like mainly how they differentiate from each other. So I'm basically part of what I observe myself, so I can do some self-observation. So that's the first part. The second part is the course content, so I'll talk to you about the contents of what we are teaching in that course. And the third part is the course pedagogy, which is different from maybe a regular Harvard course or a regular university course. And we'll start right with giving you a flavor of one of the exercises that we'll do. So Jace, please come up, and we'll do a short version of this, and then we'll do a longer version of something else at the very end.
Okay.
All right.
So I'd like you to all imagine that you're the editor of a major news agency, and yesterday you ran this story right here in the back of your weather section. So at about 8:30 Greenwich Mean Time, a meteor entered the atmosphere over the southern Ural region of Russia at a speed of about 25 kilometers per second. The light from the meteor was brighter than the sun and visible up to 100 kilometers away. Now, the object was undetected before its atmospheric entry. Due to high velocity and a shallow angle of entry, the object exploded at a height of about 30 kilometers. The explosion generated a bright flash, producing a hot cloud of dust as well as a large shock wave. It created some panic. About 7,200 buildings across 6 cities were damaged, and about 1,500 people sought medical attention for indirect injuries, mostly from broken glass. So that's the article that you ran yesterday. And then there was some video footage that came in, which we'll share with you, hopefully. This is what you were reporting on. That's the object entering. Whoop. It's going to get loud, just so you're aware. Yeah. Here's the shock wave coming up. All right, and we'll expedite this a little bit, but just to give you a sense of what was going on there. So that was what you were reporting on. Now, yesterday, same day, at about 2 Greenwich Mean Time, the UN General Assembly called an emergency meeting, which convened this morning, today, in New York at 7 Eastern Standard Time. Now, all press was barred. However, you, along with every other news agency, sent a reporter. Your journalist reported that security was wildly tight and that no one knew what was happening. So lacking anything substantial, you ran a story about New Yorkers' reaction to the sudden increase in security. Now, 35 minutes after that, a freelance photographer who's known in the business for getting photos no one can get emails you a picture, quadrupling her normal rate and noting that she has sent it to other news agencies as well. It's a little outdated, but bear with us. Your reporter corroborates, so you call your reporter, you're like, what the heck is going on? I got this picture. Your reporter corroborates that the photographer was seen being escorted away by security who had possession of her camera. You can assume, now for all intents and purposes of this exercise, you can assume that this photograph is legit. You can also assume that your competitors are looking at the same photograph right now and are faced with the same decision. Do you publish? So this is where we start. This is where we started our class. Now, quick, just a show of hands, immediate reactions. Who says yes, you publish?
I'm reporting for the Daily News, right?
It's without any associations to a specific news agency. Assuming that your competitors have this photo, you have this photo, do you publish? Anybody yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can I get some high hands just so I can get a sense of the room? Looks like about half. And no? Oh yeah, about half. And anyone paralyzed with indecision? Jackie? Okay. All right, so I'm curious, the yeses, any understanding of your reasoning why you'd publish? Sell newspapers, right. Okay, competition, make money, that's your job. Any other yeses?
I presume you have someone who can check if it's like been doctored or something like that.
So for the, yes, we're assuming that this is a legitimate photograph. Yeah.
New reporters, our job to report something like this, and people want to know.
Can you say more about that?
It's an alien. That's a totally undiscovered thing that
Okay.
we don't know about it.
So some kind of responsibility to a general public, is that what I'm hearing? Something to that effect? Okay. Jackie, did you?
Well, you could also just print like 1,000 caveats next to the picture.
Right.
Like, we aren't really claiming anything about this. It's just make of it what you will, sort of
Right.
stuff.
Right, you could spin the story, say the journalist or the photographer being the center of the story got this photograph, not necessarily the photograph being the center of the story.
So you still sell, but if it turns out to be fake, then
Right. So you're hedging your bets. Okay. How about the nose? Reasons.
I want like second sources. I don't want all the asterisks all over my reporting.
Okay, so you're not comfortable with the veracity of this photo, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I want to know where's another photo? Where's another documented proof? Where's a quote from any of these people in this room?
Gotcha. Okay, so just something further. Yeah.
Right. And so far, it's hearsay. There's
Yeah.
Visual, but okay, it's not doctored. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that before too.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
It'd be a time for extraordinary evidence.
Can you say a little more?
Well, it's an extraordinary claim,
Uh-huh,
so
okay.
you want the extraordinary evidence.
Really gotta back that up. Yeah. Any other notes? Yeah.
Well, if you're a reporter and your job is to dig, you probably have other sources, and eventually you'll get something. And stupid me, I didn't even realize what that was. Anyway, when I was looking at the photos.
You thought it was a
But
sculpture.
it's still like, without even seeing that, I still had the same thought, that you would find more information.
You would
before
find-
you just receive a photograph and go.
Okay, okay. Chen, yeah.
I will probably publish on Twitter, but not on myself.
Ah,
It's
yeah.
like, oh, here's something just come up, it's like emergent, and nobody knows what's going on, and nobody excited to know.
Yeah.
If you just publish it, but for published on the paper, I would know, yeah, what's going on. What is it? Like, assuming the photo is legit,
Mm-hmm.
but is that a really alien, or like president was hosting some kind of event for something? Right?
Gotcha.
Like Star Wars or movie or something. It could be, yeah, it could go either way.
Gotcha. So you're kind of towing the line. You're saying you will get it out there, but you won't attach it to your news agency because of this extraordinary evidence situation. Yeah, Jackie?
Like, that sort of news just sort of cast out without proper framing has the potential to create massive panic,
Oh.
instantly like damage, destruction, violent reactions from people who have no chance of getting more of the story and won't
Uh-huh.
wait for it.
Yeah.
But also this person has this picture and is going to give it to
Already has
someone
given it
else.
to, yeah.
Right. So, like, you publishing or not doesn't necessarily stop someone else from doing it.
Yeah. Can you talk about the violent reaction?
People panic. They're really dumb a lot of the times. And oh look, here's an alien and an explosion and Russia. People are going to do stuff with that and point fingers, riot, do things, or at least there's a high chance of it
Yeah.
somewhere.
War of the Worlds.
Right.
Yeah, War of the Worlds, exactly.
And that's hard to roll back quickly, right? In a paper, those asterisks, you can just print a retraction. You can't retract a riot destroying a city.
Okay. You said yes, though, too, didn't you?
I said I was the wavering back and forth.
Yeah. If you did say yes, I'm just curious, what would your headline be?
I don't know. This was the paralyzed by indecision
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
It seems peaceful. It's at the UN.
It's not Independence Day. Okay, and remember, it seemed okay at the beginning.
I want to pass it on back to Gerhard, but these are exactly the themes that we elicited from that first conversation that we work with them throughout the semester.
All right, so this was one exercise we did already in the semester. That's how we start. At the end of this talk, we'll do a larger one, group work that we're going to do that we haven't done yet. But the major question here is, again, what is astrosociology? Why would we want to do it? And in the most general sense, astrosociology studies the interrelationship between cosmic phenomena in outer space and human society. And there are a few things that happen that make astrosociology more relevant now than probably ever before, or at least centuries before. And one of those developments is the finding of exoplanets, which is now routine. I don't know, you will remember probably in the 90s when the first exoplanet was found. That was big news. Now it went out of the news cycle because people find exoplanets routinely, like every week, every day. So, and exoplanets, of course, means that we get one of the parameters of the Drake equation a little bit more kind of specific. We will know how many exoplanets there are, and the next step will be how many exoplanets there are that actually have some signature of life. So that's an important development. The other development, yeah, Jackie.
What's the Drake equation?
The Drake equation is an equation that a physicist made in the 60s, I think, 60s or 50s, long time ago. And he tried to calculate the probability of contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. So he had to multiply about 6 or 7 unknowns. Like, what's the rate of star formation? What's the rate of stars that have planets around them? This is this. What's the rate of these planets that have actually an atmosphere or conditions for life? And what's the rate of these actually developing intelligent life? So we don't know yet, but we are working on this one parameter. SETI is another thing that has been going on for a while. It's search for extraterrestrial intelligence in the radio spectrum. And if we find something there, that a signal, then that also will be big news for astrosociology, because you can imagine that the impact on human society would be not negligible if we found a legit signal from out. Yeah, and Paul is gonna talk. I'll get back to this later, but we are in a really good position here at Harvard and CFA because we have experts in a lot of these things. So Paul Horowitz is going to talk about also his old SETI, the radio wave, and the new SETI. But these are very speculative things. We haven't found anything yet. There are other things going on in the area of astrosociology that are pretty close and pretty likely. And one of them is spacefaring. I mean, humans have been at the moon. They're going to go to the Mars. Another talk is Martin Elvis of our own CFA, who is interested in asteroid mining. And he thinks this is going to happen within the next few decades. And of course, the interesting thing is that space now becomes a commercial object that companies actually try to exploit. That was never the case in the classic space race. The classic space race was between nations, Soviet Union versus the US. And it was probably not even imagined that private companies could go into space and do all sorts of things there, even recreationally. So you might be able to buy a trip into orbit, or space tourism. Another thing that I think is going to be big is space for old people, to send old people to die in space because there's no gravity. I mean, it's easier for them to get around in spaceships than on Earth, where their mobility is.
You don't have an open invitation to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk.
No, unfortunately not. No, but these are all things that have come up and that I think make the topic of astrosociology interesting. That's a very brief history because there hasn't been much. 1995 was the first mention of the word by Alan Tuff in this article called "The Positive Consequences of SETI Before Detection." And Jim Pass is probably the one who is most serious about astrosociology. He wrote that inaugural essay, and he devotes his life to propagating astrosociology and has an institute for astrosociology. So, and these are his definitions: relationship between social life and outer space, and the study of social, cultural, and behavioral patterns related to outer space. The important thing is that he casts a very wide web and says that it's multidisciplinary. So it includes the study of laws, space laws, ethics, business, and so on, in addition to sociology proper. Okay, this is one thing that I'm interested in professionally, like how do sub-discipline specialties develop? And this is how, at a very early time, astrology and astronomy parted ways. I mean, now we wouldn't hire astrologers at CFA. It's just not done because we consider that not legitimate anymore. But I should remind you, if you don't know, that many of the old astronomers were astrologers too. And this one, and then I ask you to guess who X was. X said, or is said to have used to call astrology the whorish daughter of a wise mother, astronomy, who sees herself forced to make a living by her daughter's cheap allure. Basically, astronomers are pimping out like horoscopes to make a living. And who was Mr. X? Dr. X? No, this has developed. Now there's no question anymore. I mean, you either believe in astrology or you're an astronomer, but it doesn't go together. I mean, that's the point. It's differentiation of the subdisciplines. And it was not Galileo, but you're very close. No, Milton? Kepler, yes, this was Kepler. But he was not super special. I mean, that was what astronomers did. They did horoscopes, and Kepler was employed at the emperor's court in Prague, and I mean, he wanted to do his science, but he also had to advise the emperor on various, like, should he do a war or peace or something like that. He had to do that too, and that's the whorish daughter, right? That's that he basically didn't want to do it, but had to because he was not independently wealthy, and there was not that kind of structure in place to do astronomy that we have now. Okay, that's now more contemporary, the development of scientific specialties. In my view, there are various stages that happen for a subdiscipline to actually become a subdiscipline. And we are very much at the beginning. How it usually starts is with conferences, like having a session or two on a different topic. Astrobiology is a good mother discipline that astrosociologists can kind of be part of. Then there will be associations, and that Astrosociology Research Institute is Jim Pass's institute. That's what he has, and he has that website, astrosociology.org. If you're interested in astrosociology, that's a good website to go to because he has a lot of interesting material on astrosociology on it. Then there will be journals. Journals will crop up. Journals that are related to the topic, or at some point then there will be the Journal of Astrosociology, which is now working on the third volume of it. Then there will be a stage when there are courses, like our astrosociology course. That's where we're at, and then that's a view into the future. We don't know if that ever happens, but if there will be educational sub-degrees, degrees, or even departments, then it's there to stay. I mean, once you have a department of something, they almost never go away. I think they're there forever. Two observations of that process of how a subdiscipline comes to pass is that it's rarely a linear process. There's always some phase of rapid growth. It's almost like a logistic curve. There's a takeoff curve where really that becomes a hot topic. And the other and last thing I want to talk about in terms of differentiation of scientific specialties is that there are cognitive leaders and organizational innovators. Once the history of the subdiscipline gets written, it will be written about the cognitive leaders. But almost similarly important are the organizational innovators, the people who put on the conferences, the people who edit those journals. I mean, these are the unsung heroes of the scientific process of how to institutionalize a new science. But of course, the main attention is to what we call cognitive leaders who write about it, who have new ideas about it. Okay, now that was the first part. Now I'm going to the Astrosociology course and the contents. But first I want to talk about the teaching goals. And we think Astrosociology is a good site for students to stretch their minds, to think about thoughts that had never occurred to them. And it's not so much astrosociology itself, but that the topic of astrosociology can be so bizarre, exotic, and alien. And our contention is that when students think about these very bizarre, alien, strange things, they will develop fundamental insights into themselves and into humanity. People go through life mainly without examining the most important things about life because they're so taken for granted, they're natural, they're normal. Everybody knows this. Why should we think about this? And we think that by exposing the students to astrosociology, which is really weird, out there, strange, it will challenge them to become aware of their own implicit assumptions. Like what does it mean to have a civilization? What does it mean to say the truth? What is evidence? Things like that. So that's the teaching goals. These are the three main parts of our course. We start with the history and sociology of astronomy. The second part is what we call humanistic topics, where we go to literature, like science fiction, philosophy, ethics, and the law. And the third and final part of our astrosociology course is what we call astrosociology in its narrower sense. And I'll go through this with a little more detail. So we talk about major milestones in the history of astronomy, so people get some background of what has happened, major changes in ideas, geocentric versus heliocentric, things like that. And then, of course, more recent things which are important from a sociological point of view, the rise of astrophysics in the 19th century, how astrophysics separated from astronomy. And this institution was very instrumental in this. And the two main conditions for this to happen, a scientific advance in spectroscopy combined with a technological advance in photography. So then you could put a camera in front of a lens and you could make cosmic photography. And this also, and that's another kind of astrosociological topic of interest, this also opened the doors for women in astronomy because the process decoupled observation and analysis. You didn't have to do that at night on the spot, but there was a new job description, which was an office job. You sit in the office during daylight hours and you look at things routinely and it's boring. This is a perfect job description for women in those days. They could go there, they could look at it, and there were the so-called computers in this institution, and some of these computers really took advantage of that opportunity and became leading astrophysicists in their own right. So this is an interesting astrosociological topic. Then astronomical misconceptions, that's what we are famous for, right? It's in our DNA to talk about misconceptions, so we'll do that too, right? So it's almost unavoidable. Astronomical instruments and how to build them yourself. So our students just built an astrolabe, and on Friday, tomorrow, we'll go into the collection of historical instruments, then they see real ones, and the hope is that they have a little bit more appreciation of what they see after they build a paper one. And cosmic scales, like how far is something away from something else. That's, students often are very vague about the distances between the moon and the earth and the sun and the earth, or the sun and the stars, how big. So we will talk about these things too. Humanistic topics. Science fiction, because this is probably one of the most interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary course. We always get students from a kind of English language background who like to write, who are interested in literature, and we let them pursue that interest. And science fiction, we talk about science fiction, how society and current science influences science fiction, but also how science fiction influences society. It's a two-way thing that we talk about. Truth theories, that's also, we think, an important, more philosophical topic that we'll talk about. What is truth? How do you find out about that? So we go through the major truth theories, and this is important because there's a lot of conspiracy theory and pseudoscience in the field of astrosociology. So we'll talk about UFOs, and we'll have the students deal with a situation of detecting UFOs. Like, is that believable? What evidence would you need to believe it? Ethics and laws. Yeah, we talk about vegetarianism, animals. Like, we think, and it's probably pretty much well established along Kantian's lines. Like, Kant said that we should never treat other people as means to an end. We should always treat other people as ends to themselves. Well, that's pretty much, I mean, people would kind of agree to that probably, but what about animals? It gets kind of iffy. Are animals ethical objects? Are extraterrestrials ethical objects? So do they have any rights? So that's an ethical issue, and laws, that goes into commercialization. Can you own stuff in space? Because if you want to go out and mine an asteroid, you want to own the stuff. You should be legally entitled to your whatever precious metal you mined. But there's space law that you cannot really own objects in space. Like, you can't own the moon. You can't own it. You can't own an asteroid, but you can take stuff out of the asteroids. And things like that are interesting. Like, how much can you actually take? Can you, a little piece of the asteroid, leave it out there and say, well, it's still there, but I have the rest of it. So these are interesting issues of the humanistic side. And the astrosociological topics, we talk about cosmic threats. Right? That's mainly asteroids, but other things too. Gamma ray bursts. I mean, there's a lot of things going on that could hurt us from outer space. We talk about space exploration as this becomes more of a real possibility, not an exotic possibility, but a real possibility. The existence of extraterrestrial life and civilizations. Again, talking about what is a civilization, what makes a civilization a civilization. How is that different from animals just living together? We talk about SETI and various initiatives in SETI. And then the final part is really the sociological implications of contact. What, like going back to that initial exercise that Jace did, what would happen if that was really an alien? And how would that affect society? How would that affect theology? How would that affect technology? Things like that. Would it be a good thing? Would it be a bad thing? Okay, and now the last part is pedagogy. And we characterize our approach as experiential. Students have to be very active in our course. They have to do a lot of exercises. The most conventional thing is that we have readings and the students have to read the readings every week and then we discuss the readings, but the students have to discuss them. We're not lecturing the readings again. And then they do a lot of other stuff, like class exercises, group work, team projects. We'll do one of them right now, in a few minutes' time. Close readings of texts to kind of sharpen the understanding of what really is in the text and what is not. Whole group discussions, formal debates. We have 1 or 2 formal debates where they actually have to follow a certain order of debate with rebuttals and all that sort of thing. And hands-on work, like they actually built these astrolabes. These are some of the highlights of our course, and I think because, I said this before, because we're here at the CFA and at Harvard University, these are really great places. This is a really great place to do astrosociology, because we can go to that collection of historical scientific instruments, which we'll do tomorrow, and then later on we'll come to the plate collection, and we also look at the great refractor. And so this is a very historic building, and I will just like to take as much advantage of it as we can. And that's the guest lectures we had. Avi Loeb on the Breakthrough Starshot project. You're probably all familiar with it, sending really small spaceships to a planet near Proxima, surrounding Proxima Centauri. At 20% of the speed of light, so it should be really fast. Paul Horowitz on SETI, I mentioned that before. Martin Elvis on asteroid mining, we mentioned that before also. Assessment, I mean, how do you come up with assessment in a course like that, which is somewhat unconventional? It's also unconventional in the sense that we do not have a midterm and we do not have a final exam. And the reason is that astrosociology is such a wide open area where there is no canon of expected knowledge. I mean, the contrast would be Calculus 1. Like that's almost every course in the world, at least in the US, has similar topics. And you can't say, yeah, I'm teaching Calculus 1, but we don't integrate in this course. We do something else. Then people would say, what? I mean, you have to follow the canon, and there are books and stuff. None of this exists in astrosociology. So we thought it would be against the spirit of the class to kind of test them on a set canon of knowledge. But we have small exercises throughout the semester as homework. But the major product really for students is to write a 15 to 20 page research paper that they have to hand in at the end of class. And there's a selection of some interesting papers that our students of the last cohort wrote, and this should give you a flavor of the variety of topics, and also that we think it works, that they do come up with their own interests, like the aliens, disability, and the other cosmic threats, and a new method for quantifying them. That was, of course, a physicist. Civil communication with extraterrestrials. Then somebody who was interested in science fiction would write about science fiction, 2001, and the implications of realistic science fiction. Native Americans and their ideas about the cosmos and how their socioeconomic life influenced what they thought about the cosmos. We had a music concentrator there who really liked the idea of the golden record, but then he improved on it and he wanted to make a platinum record for future records to be sent into space. Spring break in space, that's like space tourism. So we were really happy with how this went down last semester. Hope that it will go similarly this semester. And now to kind of to end this talk, Jace will come up and he will do another exercise that we will do in class later. We'll do that afterwards.
Thank you. All right, so this one is an exercise that we do in our space exploration section of this course. So this one's called A New Home. All right, so it's January 1st, 2050. We like to really integrate the science fiction themes and give them the chance to kind of role play these out. It's a date you've been anticipating for over 3 decades. For the past 33 years, you have been on a special team at the Space Y headquarters dedicated to colonizing the Red Planet. Robot-controlled living quarters landed on Mars 10 years ago and spent the past decade melting the northern polar cap to obtain oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. A stable, breathable atmosphere has been achieved, and the first planets are growing and healthy. The time has come to send the first 100 people through space to establish a new home on Mars. These 100 will build a community and prepare the settlement to accommodate growth. Further shipments of people and provisions will be possible if funding and political commitments persist, but the colonists must be prepared to prosper as a self-contained group indefinitely. As an astrosociologist, you've been asked to join a committee tasked with selecting the first 100 colonists. Blank slide. Oh, it did work. Who will you send? So, we'd like to form some small groups, I don't know, 5 people or so, and each of you will be a committee. And we're going to ask you to create a list of categories that you will use to select colonists. So, for instance, age, occupation, but please feel free to be much more creative than that. Then we'd like you to prioritize this list of categories from the most important to the least important. And then we'd like you to apply these categories to human beings, to create as detailed a roster as possible, outlining who, what, and how many people of what sorts you'll look for in the first 100 colonists. And we'll take, I don't know, 5-7 minutes to do that as a group. And then if you would please use one of these whiteboards and give us a little bit of an outline of your categories. And if you'd like, I'd be happy to divide you up. Or you can do it yourselves. Any questions on this? We really want to make you earn your lunch today. Yeah. Well, no.
No.
No, let them.
Oh yeah, they might Google it.
Yeah, exactly. Let me use it back.
as all the students.
That's a good point. You could just not send it that. So much.
This is really like expensive
We're gonna be different
Well, I think part of the problem is a lot of times these random selections are
I think in 100 you could find unlimited to meet whatever criteria you want.
Are there other things we care about? Besides diverse population?
do you send like
you get through.
teenagers? Because if it is supposed to be self-sustaining,
Yeah, exactly. You got to.
right. So it's not gonna. Unless you are trying to be more people, then so preferentially young people.
Alright, so geographically.
That's we're making around the last
Like city versus country diversity, right?
Again, like people that you also need like leaders in terms of
Well, like having people that know how to fund themselves as far as like country, but also people that know how to live in those borders. I assume it's not that space. People have to be used to that.
But you also might kill everybody. Right, it's setbacks. You're gonna find mortal enemies more than blood against each other.
Images I've seen them, right? Because they've got these little circular things, right? That they're taking the things from.
Oh, yeah. And it seems like there are things growing there. Okay.
So they're building walls with
Yeah, I think the
Alright, are there any other major factors that I care about?
We're the other 93 million.
I would actually think I argue for like, well, that's the skills-based people that we need, right? Send the Boy Scouts.
So whether it's jobs, well, really, right, specifically, so they need to
It's job/skill.
continue on human resources, right? Like,
But also if you're appropriating, you don't necessarily want to base it on
100 randomly people or like
there's a lot of learning and socialization that happens with
that like are chosen together.
Yeah,
Like you find an engineering team of 5 people who know
So I don't
each
think
other
it's
well
only
together.
the space station.
Right, like they've already worked together, know each other. That could also then maybe then go to links.
that's one solution.
Smaller internal size. I feel like that sort of thing might appear.
It's like they have accidental pregnancies too.
So like
Sure, these farmers may have their PhD in electrical
you would have people who have shared backgrounds that are
because you're going to have to genetically
Right, so
engineer
like
things.
mental stability kind of thing, right? So if you want somebody that's going through and checking people for their
Someone who's generally known to the police,
but also like you want a certain type of like certain people are going to be better stranded on the planet than others, right? Like, and that's not necessarily mean they're better than everybody else. They're just better for that particular situation, right? So
Turning to another novel, Martian, right, is someone who could both, meet the details, but can also do practical things. I think there's some people as well. And I would, in any sort of practical, people can go out. But I would have somebody with a degree in architecture and, degrees in physics and very practical people as well.
You can't have somebody that's not going to others.
Right.
But you also don't want one guy to do it, right? But
Because you can't just have one.
Pass. Yes, some exams.
No, but if he gets
if
stuck
there's
here, he
a
said.
potential, right? We are supposed to keep in mind the potential. This has to be.
All right, so now let's make our list. We're supposed to prioritize.
Right, that was one of his things.
Or is there anything else that needs to be?
And not everything.
But like,
I think
25.
So, I'm noticing that the pizzas here, we like to kind of move it, so if we could, groups wherever you are, could maybe just start putting some things on the board so we can wrap up our discussion and so we can have a record of what happened here today. We would appreciate it.
I was also really at the basic category because there's a lot of literature right now about literature where there's
psychologists, right? Certain area of like.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great category.
Yeah.
But that was back to my point, we still need.
Going crazy.
No, but you're right.
Because creator, right? We have mechanical engineer, but
Diabetes is on one side, genetic, you know.
you might want somebody with each
You have
specialty,
chronic
right?
disease that requires medication. That's a much bigger problem. It's not so simple as one solution.
Leave them out, that's probably gonna take embryo.
Right, but also the actual people.
That's okay, somebody. But there's like, I can't watch this.
Right, so there's occupation and then we need skills, right? So skills is what it is, right? Like these are occupations we necessarily need, like we need a doctor, right? That has to be their occupation.
Well, we have the old people, we can push them out, that's what you're doing. But then also there's had oh, that's not what you read?
We both thought that as soon as you said send old people to space, like we should have decided. We don't need cemeteries anymore, we have space.
Well, I really.
I mean, they're already explored. No more walkers, you don't need
So if you have any capacity for making stuff. Are there others? Maybe they'll do it extra. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, that was sort of the scientists. To try to
If you want people like this, like I think you want people that are smart enough to handle the difficult solutions, but also capable of doing the labor, right? Moving things around, building, whatever needs to be done.
Farmer, yeah.
Right.
Did you come to we had this overall
They didn't do any sort of
Resource.
talk about their gender is pretty well.
Right. So, being educated here, we're assuming that we're trying to build a community of somebody that, but assuming that the kids will talk at some point, right? We want somebody that can teach the next generation.
Right, you get
You have to assume that we get this initiative, right? That's the whole point of this 100 is that assuming that if no one else comes,
We can say we're saying.
who is Yeah, I don't understand. I just feel weird.
Traveling to it. So he wants to do it again.
They just need to be able to share everything.
No, you want
That's a good point. Yeah. You definitely
But
started.
in these subdivisions, it's sort of the most important thing they have is the collection. Like, yeah, like this, you can do live. You don't have that.
That's
It's not going to work. Yeah.
Guys, I have like.
No problem.
They make it work as a possibility.
Of course, you come out with this plan, and men are going to invent artificial globes and all
earlier too, so there's other reasons. I think that's like you don't want somebody that does so much backpacking.
Avoiding the
Right,
too much
like- Personally, my priorities would be this is
something about how a lot of like mastodon skeletons that they're finding are males, and they get kind of figure out especially like young mastodons, typically because they don't and so they were fighting, they fell off cliffs and like all sorts of stuff. And then they were like, well, they got to get
and then you want to do
versus most of the female mastodons, they were into rifle age and like their bones.
Okay, folks, the pizza will be imminent, so we have to wrap this up. And because you're not really in this class,
for me, it's like
you
if
don't
you don't
have
have
to get
like,
results.
great, like
You get penalized
right,
for
like
it.
you need it
And the purpose was to show you what kind of work the students are expected to do.
The thoughts this would trigger in the students. So you could stop wherever you are and enjoy the pizza. Thanks for coming and for listening. Yeah, we could talk about this, of course, during pizza, as we always do.